Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
Fill in the blank. After 3 games, Riley Leonard is blank. I hesitated on whether or not to even use this question after everything that happened earlier today.
I know. After 3 games, Riley Leonard is good at what we know he was good at, right? Like, we know he was good at running the ball. We knew that he was going to be iffy in the pass game. And maybe a better word is unpredictable, because, in the first game, he did enough to win. The second game, obviously, he played bad. And in the third game, he dominated. And so I think the better word that I've kind of convinced myself is really unpredictable at this point. What version of Riley Leonard are you going to get? The Riley Leonard that is, super focused and determined on, doing whatever it means to win the game, or, Riley Leonard who kind of shut down when things weren't going his way against NIU?
Yeah, Riley Leonard is, there is, at least the Riley Leonard that we've seen so far, he is a little bit of a running back playing quarterback. I kind of repulsed at hearing that at the start of the season, but the more we've seen in the last 3 weeks, it's it actually does kind of look like that. And then you look at, what he was doing against Purdue last week, making plays, but I do think that he is improving. So that's what I would go, improving as a passer. It is coming along. It's not at the rate that anyone would like it to see. And there are obviously some who, would just as soon set it all on fire and get out of there. But I think he is improving, and it's going to continue to get better. I have to think that it's going to, because again, it was less than 2 years ago the guy finished a season where he threw for almost 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns. I just don't think that completely evaporates in 2 years. He's more than just a runner. So I think that he can be more than just a runner. Here's Marcus Freeman's thoughts from today on his offensive line, which now, of course, includes Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler starting.
As I look at it, big picture-wise, we're going to continue to progress. Those guys are capable starters. They're ready. They've been prepared. It speaks to the maturity of those two to at any moment they knew they were going to be thrust into action, and we picked up right where we left off, and they did a great job and had 2 really great days of practice this week. I think there's a chemistry between centers, guards, and tackles that will continue to progress, right, as we move forward. I don't play that position, but I know that there's a comfort, obviously, knowing that guy who's inside of you if I'm a tackle, and obviously the communication between the center and the guard. So that is something that there's nothing that can expedite that process but time. But the progress of our entire offensive line, it won't stop. I think it just picked up right where we left off.
So scale of 1 to 10, Jess, your level of confidence in the Notre Dame offensive line right now.
I'd give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. And the only reason I'm not more worried about it is I think this offensive line naturally started. I think they had an idea of who the best offensive line was going into camp, but that was before seeing Riley Leonard play with the offensive line. I think Riley Leonard introduced, a need for an offensive line to be more, I would say, agile, ability to move. And I think I would say that's, Rocco Spindler's, one of his biggest downfalls, essentially, and Pat Coogan, guys who are more heavy-footed, right? Like Riley Leonard needs a pocket that can move, a mobile pocket, guys who can, block downfield, more of that stuff, right? And so, I think naturally these offensive linemen are a little bit less agile and athletic than Billy Strouth and I can't think of the other guy that got hurt. But guess what I'm getting to is if Notre Dame runs this Ashton Craig, if Notre Dame runs this kind of power run scheme that we've seen, that fits in well to someone like Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan because they can run block really well. So I have to stick with the 8 out of 10 because these guys are still very physical in the run game.
Yeah, I agree with what Indy Saylor is saying here. Still as good as they were, but the depth is gone. Like in terms of the frontline starters, my confidence level in them is an 8. I think it's still a really good line, not an excellent line. There are still some things to work through. Primarily, left tackle has to continue to grow and progress. But, again, this is a true freshman who came in the spring and opened up some eyes and got himself out there on the field as a true freshman. It doesn't happen very often in college football, and it sure doesn't happen very often at Notre Dame. So his goal, just like Leonard, is to get a little bit better every week. And you talked about that moving pocket and the need for agility. They have that with both tackles they have right now. So very confident. I think Coogan and Spindler, it's not very often where you can have two really good starters get hurt and you bring in two reserves and all of a sudden your offensive line becomes 23 games more experienced, in terms of starting experience than what you just lost from your starting lineup. So very confident in the group. Josh with a super chat. He says, buy or sell, both Coogan and Spindler come back next year. He said he asked the question in the mailbag yesterday, but they didn't get to it. Any thoughts on what you think happens there? I mean, we're kind of guessing at this point.
I would say out. I think one of them, like we were talking about earlier, once you've got that degree and you still have some remaining years, you can go on, get some NIL money, get some more, recognition, put some more tape out there and essentially have a better shot, to make it on to the next level. So I do think definitely one of the two will be gone.
Yeah, I got to sell as well. I think one of the two would go. It's just, in a transfer portal era where you can just pack up, go someplace, and potentially start right away. And you brought up that example with what Zeke Correll did. I mean, that was a starting center, and he kind of got ushered out because of Ashton Craig's emergence. But, again, they got bigger and I think better there at center. And I think Coogan's going to give them some pretty good play. But I think it's pretty it would have to be pretty doubtful that both of those guys come back next year, just like when you look at the way camp played out this year. So something else Marcus Freeman talked about today, Jordan Clark. He's got a podcast that he started this year.
That's a part of, hopefully the enticement to come to Notre Dame is that you're going to be able to utilize this huge platform that we have. We want our guys to be well-rounded individuals and to, when they have time, be able to do some things that are outside the interest of being a football player. And so I'm glad Jordan's able to capitalize off of that opportunity and still get everything in terms of football that we ask him to do completed. And I think it's important to understand these are more than just football players. These guys understand at some point this game will be over, and they're capitalizing off of the opportunities that they have here to utilize all the resources that we have, but also that they can truly capitalize off of.
So that podcast, by the way, is called The Irish Scoop with Jordan Clark, and I was just looking it up. He's done a couple of episodes so far. He had Jeremiah Love on about a week ago, and before that, he had Benjamin Morrison on as well. So what do you think about players, college players, having their own podcasts?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a surprise that Jordan Clark has a podcast. I mean, look what his dad does. He's a national TV personality. I'm sure that, that's something that Jordan would like to get into himself once football is all said and done, right? And so that's kind of what Marcus Freeman was going into is, you got to realize that like the 1% of the 1% go on to the NFL. Like you have to have, some sort of career or backup plan, prepared. And I think that it would be kind of dumb of Jordan Clark not to capitalize on his situation at Notre Dame because it gives you the opportunity, it gives you the stage to kind of go into something like this and get your name kind of, more out there essentially, right? And it's kind of like the NIL, but of kind of the podcast world at the end of the day. So I don't mind it as long as it's not a distraction, as long as you're not like going on there, saying crazy stuff about your teammate or, leaking disclosed information or, you know what I mean? Just keeping it to a certain kind of narrative or a certain kind of dialogue is more so what I would be concerned about. But what these guys do in their spare time is completely on them. Like, they have a professional life to be developing at the same time.
Well, I mean, I think with NIL, it's kind of the perfect situation. You're actually putting out a product and you're getting paid for doing the product. And what are you doing? Well, you're talking.
What are you talking about? The thing you do every day.
Yeah, with your teammates. Like, you're going to be sitting around talking with your teammates anyway. So why not
It's
make
just
a
a
little bit of
microphone
money
in front of you.
Yeah, that's right. Have a little fun with it. And like you said, kind of get you ready for maybe what comes next. Because when you look at where Ryan Clark, Jordan's dad, is at ESPN and all that stuff, maybe that helps him out down there. And Jordan Clark, by the way, is a pretty good talker himself, like a very similar personality to his dad, so like you can see that. So I think it's great, and obviously Kyle Hamilton had the podcast a couple of years ago with Cam Hart and Radigan, and I'm trying to think of who the other was. DJ Brown in there, was he part of it as well? They had the inside the garage thing, and I think it's great. I think again, because like I'd rather see them doing something like this where they're actually doing a little bit of work for what they're getting for the NIL money that they're getting, rather than just get basically a blank check for doing whatever. So I think it's pretty cool. I haven't had a chance to listen yet. I'm kind of surprised they've only put out a couple of episodes, though.
Listen, I haven't watched Here Come the Irish since they lost to NIU. So,
well, they're not putting them out during the season, so you don't have to worry about that. The next episode doesn't drop until early December, so you don't have to worry about that.
Got some time.
So, a couple of different people asked about this. Andrew put it up. What do you think about this Mel Kiper Jr. wanting to get rid of the two deep safety, Tampa 2 defensive stuff?
This is going to make a lot of people mad, but I love that this is teed up for me.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So the Mel Kiper right now is honestly a lot of Notre Dame fans at the end of the day. Mel Kiper has been spoiled by these air raid offenses and the show that's put on by these offenses, and a lot of passing yards and deep touchdown passing touchdowns, big explosive plays. And that's why these defenses have gone to the 2 high safety or the cover 2 shell. They don't want the big plays. They don't want Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid hitting these home runs, right? And so what does this force you to do? It forces you to be a better running team and also to get your running backs more involved in the pass game, because if you're running 2 high safeties, you're probably running man underneath. And so if you can get a mismatch, running back on a linebacker, it's a great situation. And so I think that the cover 2 high look emphasizes the need for good running backs and a good run game. And again, we've been so spoiled by these pass heavy offenses. There's nothing wrong with the good old fashioned running back getting close to 30 carries a game and going for 100 to 150 yards on the ground. And again, I equate that to Notre Dame fans, because you can't be mad how you get the yards. As long as you get the yards, what does it matter? As long as you're beating these teams, what does it matter? And that's why we've seen some low scoring, not a lot of passing yards out of these quarterbacks so far, is because it's been more, run heavy, run dominant at the end of the day. Yeah,
I mean, look, they've dumbed down offenses so much. We've talked about this before with these young quarterbacks coming out of college. They've dumbed it down and added more of the RPO stuff. That didn't even used to be a thing in the NFL probably 10, 12 years ago or something like that. They've already changed things so much to try to get these young quarterbacks to come in and have success right away. Like Sloppy Joe says, it's reminiscent of of Major League Baseball banning the shift. If they need to ban certain defense just for their offense to flourish, the offensive schemes are flawed respectively. I don't completely, I know what you're saying, but at the same time, like, everybody in baseball went so overboard with the shifts, and I think that the game has come back a little bit since they've done away with the drastic shifts. Anthony says, absolutely ridiculous. Defenses are already handicapped enough, and that's the thing. All these rules are in favor of the offense. Like, the offense just needs to figure it out. If you can't throw deep quite as often, figure something out. I mean, that's what it comes down to me, but I think you teed off on it pretty well. I was shocked when I saw that Mel Kiper's coming. Oh, we don't need 2 deep safeties anymore. Wow.
It's just ludicrous.
Yeah.
It is so hard to already stop offenses, and you're going to say you can't play a certain sort of coverage? Come on.
Yeah. Kenny wants to know, SC or Michigan Saturday? Who you pulling for?
Oh, USC, because I want USC to be undefeated by the time the end of the regular season, or by the time that last game of the season comes up. A stronger, more highly ranked USC just sets up Notre Dame for a better stage if they can pull off the victory.
Absolutely. You got to pull for USC because if you're
pull for every team on your schedule outside of when you play them.
If you're Notre Dame, you need USC to be sitting there at worst a 10-2 team going into that final weekend in Los Angeles, obviously assuming that Notre Dame takes care of its business on the way up to that. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame alum Brandon Aubrey has hit an NFL record 13 straight field goals of 50-plus yards to begin his career.
It's pure dominance is what it is. He's the best kicker in the game right now. Hasn't missed over 50, can probably hit from 70, and I think he's missed like 1 field goal overall. He's completely dominating, and it's fun to see because he's going to be a weapon for the Cowboys, and I think it's something that's going to be a difference maker in a couple games this season.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Like when they run him out there on the field, and like we'll be texting during games, it's like, just get the ball to midfield and let Aubrey try to kick it. You've got complete confidence that it's going to go in. We were there in Cleveland a couple of weeks ago, and we thought we were going to get to see, what was it, a 69-yarder before Mike McCarthy chickened out.
Yeah.
And didn't let him try it.
They should have just let it fly, and they threw that stupid Hail Mary instead.
I know. The guy is so money, and like he just drills them too. Most of them, there've been 1 or 2 where he's like just kind of put it in the right upright, but he's got just such a big leg and such accuracy to go along with that big leg. It's been pretty amazing to see him every week. So I guess I should have saved that last one, because which game interests you more, USC Michigan or Georgia Tech Louisville?
Probably Georgia Tech Louisville, considering those are 2 teams that are in near proximity on Notre Dame's schedule. I want to see how those teams really are, and it's a good time to kind of scout both of them because they're playing each other, right? I anticipate the USC Michigan game comes down to, can Michigan run the ball and control time of clock and not allow USC's offense to pull away? Because if USC gets a multiple touchdown lead, that game's over. Michigan's not built to kind of come back with the offense that they have. And so it's got to be Michigan being able to run the ball and USC being able to stop the run. But again, I know Louisville and Georgia Tech isn't as, sexy on paper, but as a Notre Dame fan, that's the game I'm more keying in on.
Yeah, I mean, after this game this weekend against Miami, Ohio, Louisville and Georgia Tech are 2 of the next 3 opponents that Notre Dame will face after that. So to get them playing each other, and I think we're going to find out a lot. We're going to find out even more about Louisville in this game, because they've essentially played a couple of patsies so far. They played Austin Peay and they played Jacksonville State. Okay. So I want to see what Louisville is really made of, how close to last year's team they are. So I'm much more interested in that, because we've got a lot, like I'm still interested in USC Michigan because it's a much more marquee game, but we've got a lot more time to go before Notre Dame actually sees USC. So pretty interested to see how that Georgia Tech Louisville game comes out. Fill in the blank. Adrian Wojnarowski retiring from ESPN to become the general manager of the men's basketball team at his alma mater, St. Bonaventure, is blank.
Is awesome. I think that's so awesome that a guy gets to kind of, step away from a career that he's been so successful at. And in his words, pursue something at this time that he's more passionate about, something that he kind of wants to get back to. And so I think it's really cool that he's able to kind of divert and shift his attention at this point. It's kind of like, honestly, what I'd love to do with my life is, be an engineer for as long as I can, and then go on and maybe coach like a high school football team, in the later years of my
late
life.
career
So,
shift, just do
yeah.
something, casual.
Again, I know like coaching and stuff is stuff that I would be passionate about, but it's just, it takes more time. It's not what I went to school in for, put a lot of money into. Right. And so it's like, you gotta do what's going to pay the bills and pay off those loans before you go into something like coaching. So I see that more as I've joked with a lot of people. That's kind of like a retirement gig, is just to go off and maybe teach like a high school math class and coach a football team or something.
Yeah, there you go. I could see that. I can see that in your future. Yeah, I mean, and that life, being that, the Woj bombs and all that stuff, and having to be, they're literally competing for seconds sometimes, like him and Shams over at the Athletic, for like who's going to
like
get
it was
it out
getting pretty
first.
hostile for a while there.
Yeah, and like they it's funny because I guess I was just reading yesterday, I didn't realize they actually worked together for a little bit at Yahoo before Woj went to ESPN, and like he's actually from like the Bristol area, but grew up never really even wanting to be at ESPN. But ultimately, they offered him so much money that he couldn't turn it down. And that's the big thing. Like he's walking away from millions of dollars by staying at ESPN, doing what he was doing. To basically just have a change of lifestyle, take some pressure off him. I mean, he's going to go, it's St. Bonaventure, so it's like, it's not like he's even going to St. John's or something like that with Rick Pitino. And there's a whole lot of pressure on him. So good for him. I mean, the guy's still only in his mid 50s, so he's still got a lot, and I'm sure there'll be a lot less stress for him. So power to him. Fill in the blank. It's blank that after their 1-8 start to the season, the Indiana Fever are playoff bound with a 20-19 record, and Caitlin Clark has set rookie records for both points and assists this season.
I think it's electric, and it's going to continue to electrify the women's basketball game. And it's kind of plays into the whole, Caitlin Clark effect. And it's funny because, before Angel Reese got hurt, there was serious debate, which shouldn't have been, about who was rookie of the year and, that sort of stuff. It's like, you could almost make the case that Caitlin Clark deserves, to be in the MVP type discussion, right? Because if you take her out, what's the one thing that changed from last season? Yes, I know they got a new coach, and, one that they got Caitlin Clark as well, but they were still the worst team in the league last year. Now to go on and be a playoff team, I just think it's electric, and I think that there's definitely more to come in terms of the Caitlin Clark effect. I think she's just kind of scratching the surface, and to do this in her rookie year is just really tremendous.
And I mean, all the Gino talk and all the Taurasi talk and all that different stuff about, she's not going to make it in our league, and you've still got all the Cheryl Swoops, and somebody brought up the Cheryl Swoops up a couple of weeks ago, and I hadn't really seen it, but there's been kind of more attention because the regular season's getting ready to end this weekend, and then the playoffs are going to start. It's just, but there was all this, look at, she's 1-8. Look at how bad this team is. And, like, what can she do? What kind of difference can she make? And then there was the Olympics debate and all that different stuff. I really think she, like, that Olympic break really, and I said it going in, it did her well to just kind of sit and rest and kind of get re-energized a little bit after playing a full college season and then, jumping right into the WNBA. I mean, it's pretty amazing. It said it at the start of the season. No one has seen a phenomena in women's basketball like the Caitlin Clark phenomena. And I just think the Indiana Fever are just going to keep getting better every year. So it's pretty fun to see, again, everyone was ready to just write her off and write them off. And there were a lot of questions about the coach and all the different stuff at the start of the season when they started off 1-8, but to see them rebound and come back around, they've beaten pretty much everybody, in the league at least once this season. So they've more than proved themselves. She's obviously proved themselves with the record that she set as well. So it's pretty cool for the player who was like, oh, you got to change that shot. And, she's not going to be physical enough to handle this league, and to set rookie records in both points and assists right away. And to see, not just record set, but to see the team pretty dramatically improve as well. It says quite a bit, obviously.
Yes, it does.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this show. Thanks for being here on the Thursday. Thanks for all the great we in, we out questions. Tomorrow, of course, we record the IB Countdown to Kickoff show, and then we drop it. Had it up, I think, pretty much before 7 o'clock the last couple of weeks. So look for it both on YouTube as well as your podcast platforms. And you will find the IB Countdown to Kickoff for one final show before Notre Dame in Miami, Ohio on Saturday at Notre Dame Stadium. If you're in town, welcome to town. Enjoy the game this weekend. Of course, they've got the post-game show afterwards, and we'll be back next Monday as well. We will talk to you then. IB Nation Sports Talk.